On this Wednesday night, forced out of Fort McMurray, the residents leaving everything behind again.
We've been through this before.
What's helping crews fight the flames, and when evacuees could return home. The attempted assassination of Slovakia's prime minister. His condition, what we know about the accused gunman, and what witnesses heard. On the run, the moment a French prisoner escaped, and the unprecedented manhunt for him. Plus, painting more happy little trees.
He's just been such a wonderful influence on me.
The art of carrying on Bob Ross's legacy.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Carolyn Jarvis.
Bye-bye.
A heart-stopping scene that is all too familiar for residents of Fort McMurray, Alberta. Traumatic memories from the 2016 wildfire that decimated the town, destroying 2,400 homes, are flooding back.
I'm sure these memories will create fear and uncertainty for many in Fort McMurray.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us. Roughly 6,000 people in Fort McMurray were ordered out last night after a fast-moving wildfire exploded in size. The fire is burning only 5.5 kilometers from the edge of town, and locals are not taking any chances.
We've been through this before, right? So just hanging in there for sure.
It does bring everything back up again.
Like, we have our bags packed and we have our passports and stuff like that ready to go.
Now, that fire is just one of many out-of-control blazes in Western Canada, including in BC and Manitoba. We'll get to those fires a little bit later in the newscast, but first, Heather Yorks West begins our coverage from Alberta tonight.
So this is where we live.
In scenes eerily reminiscent of 2016, the year fire burned much of Fort McMurray to the ground. Thousands of the city's residents were once again forced to hit the road. The evacuation order came late Tuesday afternoon. By nightfall, more than 6,600 people had left their homes behind.
Yeah, this is our second one, so kind of got the routine down now, I guess.
Communities like Beacon Hill were devastated 8 years ago. Now, the mostly rebuilt homes are again empty, vulnerable to the advancing flames.
We got evacuated out of school because there was a lot of smoke and fire.
After a day of massive fire growth fueled by strong winds, cooler temperatures, and a change in wind direction Wednesday offered firefighters a welcome reprieve.
We are expecting the fire to move away from the community and away from the highway. These are really favorable winds for us. We're seeing lower winds.
But winds can change quickly, keeping crews busy as they try to gain the upper hand. Alberta, the first jurisdiction in Canada to use night vision-enabled air support, had 3 helicopters dump water on the blaze overnight, while fire conditions were less intense. And city officials say residents outside the evacuation zone are safe to remain at home.
They seem more prepared for this wildfire, so we're not that, nervous about it. We're just waiting for them to tell us if we're going to be evacuated or not.
Home to Canada's oil sands, energy companies are watching the fire closely as well, with Imperial Oil reducing its workforce in the area to just essential staff.
I know this is a stressful and uncertain time.
The city says evacuees will not be allowed home until after the long weekend, which, mercifully, is forecast to see cooler temperatures and some rain in the days ahead. Heather Yorks West, Global News, Calgary.
One of the neighborhoods in Fort McMurray that's under the evacuation order is Beacon Hill, which was gutted in the 2016 fire. That's where we find Nicole DiDonato tonight. Nicole, what's it like on the ground there?
Carolyn, it's very quiet here, especially compared to the frenzied evacuation that happened yesterday. RCMP have the entry into the Beacon Hill neighborhood blocked off and are only letting in essential workers and residents who need to collect important belongings like medication. I spoke to a few residents who weren't evacuated and decided to stay in town. Many don't appear to be too worried about the wildfire coming into the city, but they tell me they are prepared to leave if they need to. to. And yesterday, I caught up with multiple evacuees who were leaving town. Some of them lived through that devastating 2016 wildfire and chose to leave on their own out of fear history could be repeating itself. Some say they felt more prepared this time around and say the communication from officials has been better. Officials also saying they learned lessons from 2016 and are more prepared to tackle this wildfire. For example, here in Beacon Hill, fire crews are taking proactive measures, including setting up sprinklers to protect these homes in case the fire gets closer. We've also been hearing lots of helicopters flying overhead today. Alberta Wildfire says about 1 millimeter of rain fell on the wildfire last night, but as you can see, there is still some smoke hanging in the air. As for when the more than 6,600 evacuees will be allowed to come back in, officials say that's all going to depend on the weather conditions and how quickly they can get this fire under control. Carolyn.
Nicole DiDonato in Fort McMurray, Alberta, thank you. And in BC now, light rain could reduce the risk of a wildfire near the town of Fort Nelson. Officials say the flames are also moving away from the community and toward a nearby river. About 5,000 people have been under an evacuation order since last Friday. No word on when they could return home. About 130 active wildfires are burning across BC tonight. In Manitoba, about 500 people have been forced to flee the community of Cranberry Portage because of a wildfire there. The blaze measures more than 300 square kilometers, about two-thirds the size of Winnipeg. It's less than 2 kilometers away from the town. Crews say it could take a month to extinguish. Ontario's self-proclaimed crypto king has been arrested in relation to an alleged multi-million-dollar investment fraud. Durham Regional Police say 25-year-old Aidan Paterski and one of his associates have been charged with fraud over $5,000. We expect to learn more details during a news conference tomorrow. The Prime Minister of Slovakia is in life-threatening condition tonight after being shot in what's being described as an attempted assassination. The Interior Minister says Robert Fico was shot 5 times as he was exiting government meetings this afternoon. The alleged shooter has been detained. As Goomansingh reports, Fico's government believes the attack was politically motivated.
Disturbing video capturing a politically motivated assassination attempt on Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico, according to a top minister. Medics shielded the 59-year-old from the cameras as he was wheeled into a hospital to undergo surgery. The divisive political figure returned to power last fall, saying he would stop sending weapons to Ukraine and end irregular migration. The attack on Fico has unified politicians around the globe. Slovakia's outgoing president said it was an attack on democracy. I am shocked. We are all shocked by the terrible and malicious attack. A vile attack is what the president of the European Commission called it. Hungary's Viktor Orban noted the attack on his friend, adding, "God bless him and his country." Fico was shot after he walked over to a barricade where people had gathered outside of a government building in a small town. I heard 3 shots. It was quick, one by one, like if you were to throw a firecracker on the ground. Government officials say the man arrested at the scene fired 5 times. He was identified by local media as a 71-year-old writer. This escalation that is taking place in society, says this member of parliament, can really lead to what we are experiencing now. As Slovakia comes to terms with the violent act, there's an acknowledgement polarizing politics are increasingly impacting communities. Goomansingh, Global News, London.
Ukraine says it's pulled back troops from several villages in the border region of Kharkiv as the military struggles to contain a new incursion by Russian forces. Speaking to military leaders in a televised meeting today, President Vladimir Putin hailed Russia's advances. Moscow claims to have captured 2 more settlements in the region, prompting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to cancel all upcoming foreign trips. America's top diplomat, meanwhile, continued his meetings in Kyiv, announcing a further $2 billion in military aid. Antony Blinken says the money will help speed up the delivery of weapons to the front lines. There's more trouble tonight for Boeing as the U.S. Justice Department warns the company could face criminal prosecution over 2 deadly crashes of its 737 MAX aircraft. The aviation giant is being accused of breaching an agreement that shielded it from criminal prosecution in connection with the crashes. As Jackson Proskow explains, this comes after a series of recent safety incidents.
The blowout on board an Alaska Airlines 737 MAX may have been the final straw, sparking renewed scrutiny of Boeing just days before a non-prosecution agreement with the U.S. Justice Department was set to end.
They've worn out a lot of their good credibility, and now people are taking a harder look at them, as they should.
In a letter, the Justice Department warned Boeing is subject to prosecution, alleging violation of the 2021 agreement, which let Boeing avoid criminal liability for 2 crashes of the 737 MAX that killed 346 people. Boeing employees were accused of misleading regulators about the aircraft's flight control system, later blamed for causing the planes to nosedive. The company agreed to pay $2.5 billion in fines.
It was a sweetheart deal that the families were excluded from participating in violation of their rights as crime victims.
The Justice Department hasn't said exactly how Boeing violated the agreement or if it will ultimately bring charges. In a statement to Global News, Boeing says, "We believe that we have honored the terms of that agreement."
We're very grateful that the Department of Justice has finally come to their senses.
Chris Moore's daughter Danielle was one of 18 Canadians killed in the Ethiopian Airlines MAX crash. He's hopeful that if prosecution proceeds, it could force Boeing executives to testify about what they knew.
I'd like to see a full prosecution. I'd like to see of Boeing and senior management. Bottom line is I want to find out what happened.
Though Boeing has repeatedly promised to clean up its act, whistleblowers and other safety concerns continue to pop up. The threat of criminal prosecution comes on top of several federal investigations, which are still ongoing. Carolyn?
Jackson Proskow in Washington, thank you. In a video on social media, U.S. President Joe Biden challenged former President Donald Trump to agree to a campaign debate with him. And he did.
Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice.
The pair will square off first on June 27th and again on September 10th. Donald Trump posted his response on social media as well. I'll be there. Let's get ready to rumble. Manhunt in France coming up. How a prisoner known as the Fly got away. Plus, state of emergency in New Caledonia. The fiery protests that took a deadly turn. And the miniature poodle nabbing the big prize at the Westminster Dog Show. A curfew in New Caledonia didn't stop deadly protests in the French territory. Burnt-out cars and buildings lined the streets. 3 Indigenous demonstrators and 1 police officer have been killed. France declared a state of emergency in the territory today after days of protests over constitutional reform. French lawmakers approved a bill expanding voting rights for non-Indigenous residents living on the islands. Critics say it could marginalize Indigenous people. There's a major manhunt underway in northern France. A suspected drug boss was being driven back to jail from a court appearance when a car rammed into his prison van. Armed men then opened fire on the vehicle, killing 2 officers and helping the prisoner escape. As Mike Armstrong explains, the attack has stunned the country and left prison guards shaken.
This was a symbolic shutdown of the prison that until Tuesday held Mohamed Amra. Guards walked out temporarily, calling for changes after 2 colleagues were killed. The union representative says something went wrong and that the staff is shocked and saddened. The French Interior Minister says everything is being done to find the man who escaped and the gunman who helped him. The 30-year-old Amra has a long criminal history. His most recent indictment was for a kidnapping where the victim died. Now, the attack on the prison convoy was about 90 kilometers northwest of Paris. Amra had just appeared in court in the city of Rouen and was being transported south to a prison about 50 minutes away. While prosecutors say the convoy was being followed. It was at this toll that the gunmen made their move. One of the attackers' vehicles had passed the convoy and pulled over to wait. When the prison van was moving through the toll, it was rammed by a black SUV. What followed was a gunfight where witnesses dove to the ground in a bus nearby. At least 5 armed attackers opened fire, eventually freeing Amra, believed to be the man in the white shoes. By the time they left, 3 prison guards were seriously injured and 2 dead. More than 400 officers have been deployed as part of the search. The government is promising the public and prison guards the gunman will be arrested, prosecuted, and punished. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Tangled in fishing gear. Ahead, the efforts to free an endangered right whale in the Gulf of St. Lawrence.
Listen to the crowd. I have goosebumps.
Well, with that due, how could you not win? Sage, the perfectly coiffed miniature poodle, took the top prize at the prestigious Westminster Dog Show last night. Her owner says she can retire now and venture outside in the rain without anyone worrying about her hairstyle. Sage celebrated her Best in Show win with a steak lunch from a Michelin-starred chef in New York. The arrival of the first North Atlantic right whale spotted in Canadian waters this year is no cause for celebration. The female in the Gulf of St. Lawrence is entangled in fishing gear, as has happened to so many in recent years. There are fewer than 360 right whales remaining on Earth. The species is listed as critically endangered. As Heidi Petracek reports, rescuers are hoping this one can be freed.
The North Atlantic right whale, known as Sheila, hasn't been seen since it was first spotted Friday, with fishing gear entangled around its mouth.
We have a standardized protocol to look for the whale with eyes in the air and on the water.
The whale could be anywhere along the East Coast by now. New Brunswick's Campobello Island Whale Rescue Team has deployed to a known whale feeding area in the hopes Sheila will be there.
As time goes on, animals can get more wrapped up.
If they find the whale, they'll attempt the dangerous and delicate work of disentanglement.
You only get so many chances to approach a stressed out animal closely. So when we do go in and cut some rope, then we back off and we wait and see what happens.
With only 356 North Atlantic right whales remaining and 70 active breeding females, every one saved matters. There are now 7 whales in Canadian waters, triggering the suspension of commercial fishing in parts of the Gulf of St. Lawrence for at least 15 days.
We're really trying to prevent the entanglements before they occur. It's not a perfect science, but it has been an effective tool in recent years.
Another tool is rope-on-demand technology. It keeps fishing gear on the ocean floor, floated on command only when it's time to collect the catch. Regulatory changes and industry adoption slow but steady.
Nobody wants to see whales entangled. Nobody wants to be contributing to those risks, especially with the North Atlantic right whale.
All the eyes on the water, the surveillance teams, the fishers that are out there fishing, please let us know if you see this whale.
It's not the first time this whale has been entangled. 40 North Atlantic right whales have died after vessel strikes or entanglements since 2017. Conservationists hope Sheila won't make it 41. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
The joy of painting. Next, a new host picks up the paintbrush in honor of Bob Ross. For more than a decade, the soothing instructions of Bob Ross filled living rooms around the world with his hit TV show, The Joy of Painting. But as he was planning his 32nd season, cancer took his life. Now, nearly 30 years later, those unfinished episodes are being brought to the small screen with the same happy little trees and happy little accidents. Mike DeRelay reports.
I think there's an artist hid in the bottom of every single one of us.
Nobody would ever call Bob Ross's Joy of Painting exciting. Riveting? Somehow it was.
Tell you what,
put a little white with that. I'm going to make a distant mountain first.
For 31 seasons, he taught his wide fandom how to paint, always in the same soothing, almost whispery voice that often delivered unintentional hilarity.
As I say, these are little baby flying squirrels. Okay, guys, you want to sit in my pocket while we do this? Huh? Here, you jump right in there.
With his signature blue shirt and puffy perm, he was retro in real time.
Hey, what can do?
Iranian TV even spoofed him, but none arguably did it better than Jack Black.
Now, Cage has a big bushy beard, but I'm not going to draw that because I feel like he's just copying my beard, and I don't like it.
Ross had completed 7 paintings for season 32 of his show before he died in 1995. Almost 3 decades later, Nicholas Hankins is set to teach a new generation how to paint, starting with Ross's last works.
It's just been such a wonderful influence on me, and I know a lot of other people too, so it's real special to sort of pay homage to Bob.
But homage only goes so far. Unlike Ross, Hankins doesn't have a perm. The delivery, however, sounds eerily familiar.
Sometimes if you wind up with a cloud that looks a little too much like another cloud, it's a good idea to change it a little bit.
It should come as no surprise then that Hankins is a Ross devotee, right down to the folksy charm.
We'll beat the devil out of it, get it nice and dry.
Which he unapologetically borrowed from the master himself.
Just beat the devil out of it.
Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Wednesday night. I'm Carolyn Jarvis. Tonight's Your Canada is this family farm in South Johnville, New Brunswick. We love to see your Canada. Please email it to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow night. Have a great night.